It was a Tuesday, or maybe a Wednesday. I can't remember the day of the week, only the date, October 12th. I walked into the old library at 8:17 a.m., the same as I had every weekday for 7 years. Same worn linoleum, same smell of dust and old paper, same creaky floorboard near the reference section. I was a librarian, not by passion, but by default. I liked the quiet, the predictability. I liked knowing exactly where everything was, including myself. I was 38, single, lived alone with a cat named Marmalade who judged me silently. And I had accepted that my life was fine. Settled, unchanging. That was the word I used in my head. Unchanging. Safe. Boring, maybe, but safe. That morning, I was heading to the back storage room to retrieve a box of donated books for cataloging. I turned the corner past the microfiche machines, the one spot where the fluorescent lights always flickered. And there it was, a door. Not just any door. A heavy, dark wood door with an old-fashioned brass knob and a small, frosted glass panel at the top. It was set into the wall where the wall had always been a solid, unbroken expanse of beige paint and cheap paneling that led to the boiler room. I stopped. I blinked. I looked down the hall. I looked back. The door was still there, solid, real. It hadn't been there yesterday. I was sure of it. I had walked this exact path too, 555 times. I knew every chip in the paint, every scuff mark. This door was new. I stood there, frozen. My heart started thudding against my ribs like a trapped bird. I looked around. The library was empty except for Mrs. Gable, the senior volunteer, who was already at the front desk, squinting at a crossword. I could call out to her. I could ask Mrs. Gable, "Did you see this door appear?" But the words felt absurd even in my head. Doors don't just appear. Not in real life. Not in a municipal library in a small town where the most exciting event was the annual book sale. I took a step closer. The wood looked real. The brass knob gleamed dully under the flickering light. I reached out, hesitated, then touched it. Cold, solid, real. I turned the knob. It moved smoothly, silently. I pushed. The door opened inward with a soft, almost inaudible click. Beyond it was darkness. Not the darkness of an unlit room, but a thick, velvety blackness that seemed to absorb the light from the hallway. I couldn't see the back wall, the floor, anything. It was like looking into a hole cut into reality. I leaned forward, peering. Nothing, just black. And then, from that blackness, a sound. A low hum, like distant traffic or the vibration of a large machine. It wasn't loud, but it was there, beneath the silence. I stepped back, my hand dropping from the knob. My breath came fast. I shut the door. It closed with the same soft click. I stood there, staring at the plain wall again. The door was gone, vanished, as if it had never been. I didn't tell anyone, not Mrs. Gable, not my neighbor Ben, who ran the hardware store and always asked about my weekend. Not even Marmalade, though he stared at me all evening with those yellow eyes that seemed to know more than he let on. I told myself I'd imagined it. Stress. A trick of the light. A weird glitch in my brain. But I knew. I knew what I'd seen. And I knew, with a certainty that settled deep in my bones, that it would happen again. On the same date, October 12th, the year passed. I watched the calendar. October 12th approached. I tried to be normal. I cataloged books. I helped students find sources. I pretended the world was solid and predictable. But underneath, I was counting days. October 10th, October 11th, and then October 12th. I arrived at 8:17 a.m., same as always. Same linoleum, same dust, same creaky floorboard. I turned the corner. There it was, the door. Exactly where it had been, heavy wood, brass knob, frosted glass. My heart did that trapped bird thing again, but this time there was something else. Not just fear, a pull, a question, what if? I didn't hesitate this time. I turned the knob and pushed. The darkness was there, the hum was there. But this time I didn't step back. I stepped forward, just one step, into the blackness. It wasn't cold. It wasn't hot. It was still, silent except for that hum. And then light. Not a sudden flash, but a slow, gentle illumination, like dawn breaking in a room with heavy curtains. I was standing in a space, a room, but not a room like any I'd ever seen. The walls weren't walls, they were made of light, shifting patterns of color and shadow that moved like water. The floor was soft under my feet, not carpet, not grass, but something in between. And in the center of the room stood a single chair, an ordinary wooden chair, the kind you'd find in any school or library. On it sat a book, a thick, leather-bound book with no title on the spine. I walked toward it. My footsteps made no sound. I reached the chair. I picked up the book. It was warm. I opened it. The pages weren't paper. They were moments, my life, unfolding in moving images and sounds. My 10th birthday party, the cake with the lopsided frosting. My first day of high school, walking alone down a crowded hall, feeling invisible. The day I got the library job, the relief, and the quiet disappointment that it wasn't something more. The night I broke up with David, the man I thought I'd marry, because he wanted children and I didn't. Not really. Not then. Not now. The image shifted. It showed me last October 12th, standing in front of the closed door, hand on the knob, turning away. And then it showed me today, stepping through. I turned the page, and there it was, the future. Not a single future, but possibilities, branches, paths. One showed me staying at the library, retiring at 65, moving to a small cottage by the sea alone. Another showed me quitting, traveling, writing a book about doors. Another showed me meeting someone, falling in love, having a child. Another showed me standing in front of the door next October 12th, not stepping through, closing it forever. I dropped the book. It fell silently to the soft floor and vanished. The light in the room began to dim. The walls of color and shadow started to fade. I was being pushed back. Out. I turned and stepped through the doorway, back into the library hallway. The door clicked shut behind me. I was standing in the same spot, facing the plain wall. The door was gone again. I stood there, breathing hard. My hands were shaking. I looked at my watch. 8:22 a.m. 5 minutes. Only 5 minutes had passed in the real world. But I was not the same person who had walked into that hallway 5 minutes ago. I didn't go to work that day. I called in sick. I drove home. I sat on my couch. Marmalade jumped into my lap. I told him everything. He listened, as cats do, with a kind of detached attention that felt like judgment and absolution all at once. The next year, October 12th came again. I stood in front of the door. I knew what was on the other side. I knew what I would see. I knew the weight of the choice. I turned the knob. I pushed. I stepped through. I didn't look at the book this time. I didn't need to. I walked to the center of the room of light and color. I closed my eyes. And I made a choice, not about a future path, but about the present moment. I chose to step back into my life, not as it was, but as it could be. I chose uncertainty. I chose possibility. I chose to stop waiting for the door and start living with the knowledge that it exists. I stepped back into the hallway. The door vanished. I walked to work. I didn't quit that day. I didn't move to the sea. I didn't meet a soulmate, but I started writing. I started saying yes to things that scared me. I adopted another cat. I joined a book club. I began to live, not just exist. The door appears once a year. I know it will be there tomorrow. I know I could step through again. But I also know that the real magic isn't in the door, or the room of light, or the book of possibilities. The real magic is in the choosing, in the knowing that every day, every moment is a door. And sometimes you just have to turn the knob.